Big news from the vice presidential campaign trail today. Big policy news from Congressman and presumptive vice presidential nominee Paul Ryan.
Nobody is proposing to deny birth control to anybody.
That is a new position for Congressman Ryan. And frankly, it's a new position for the Republican Party until this week, until they got saddled with Mr. Legitimate Rape and have tried to make a big show of rejecting him. The Republican Party in general, and Paul Ryan specifically, had been quite open in their efforts to roll back access to birth control. They did not used to deny that this is what they were doing. Back in February, Paul Ryan was among the chorus of Republicans inveighing against the new health insurance rules that required insurance to cover contraception. Rules like that in state law had been a huge practical part of American women's access to contraception in 28 states. The new federal rule essentially made it national. When Mr. Ryan was asked at the time on Meet the Press if he thought his own party, Republicans, were maybe focusing too much on birth control and opposing this new rule that would make birth control more accessible, his answer was no. Republicans in the Senate tried and failed to overturn the birth control insurance rule. House Republicans were also planning to do that until they got cold feet on the issue. House Republicans, including Paul Ryan, did, of course, vote to repeal the entire health reform law, birth control access and all. They did that twice for good measure, along with more than 30 separate votes to repeal, defund, or knock out portions of the law. Paul Ryan has also voted multiple times to defund Planned Parenthood, one of the largest providers of contraceptive services in the country, and his Paul Ryan budget would eliminate funding for all Title X family planning programs altogether. Not just Planned Parenthood, everything. But Paul Ryan has not just spent his time in Congress trying to roll back access to birth control. He also sponsored a bill that would declare all fertilized eggs in the United States to be people, which would have the effect of banning the most popular forms of birth control that American women use.
Nobody is proposing to deny birth control to anybody.
Except you, Paul Ryan. And almost all of the rest of the Republicans in Congress right now. Except for all of those things you have proposed and sponsored and voted for that would restrict access to birth control or just plain criminalize it. Except for all of that, yeah, nobody's proposing to deny birth control to anybody. I have a follow-up question. Now that he is trying to become vice president, Paul Ryan does not want you to remember his record on birth control or on abortion. And honestly, I don't think that either party wanted this to be the center of the fight this year. But Republicans put these issues at the center of their policy agenda in the states and in Congress for the last 2 years. And then they picked a guy to be their vice presidential nominee who is one of the party's true hardliners on these issues. And so, well, I don't think Democrats particularly wanted to run on abortion rights and defending access to contraception. I mean, I don't think this administration is afraid of it. I think they've been better on it than most Democrats have been. But you can see it when they're out on the campaign trail. They would rather be talking about the economy. Same thing with the Republicans. They would rather be talking about the economy or welfare or whatever. But none of them expected to be campaigning on abortion and birth control the week before the conventions. But this is not going away. This is a political fight that now can't be avoided because it is an actually radical thing that has been dragged right up to the top and right into the center of what is supposed to be mainstream politics. It's not a theoretical thing. The Republican vice presidential nominee really did sponsor a bill designed to ban hormonal birth control. And he did it just last year. And Republicans in the states really have, in the last 2 years, enacted more restrictions on abortion rights than at any time since Roe versus Wade became law. And it is having a real impact in real people's lives. It's not just a talking point that the Republicans wanted to shut down the federal government rather than keep funding Planned Parenthood. That is an actual thing that happened. And last year, Republicans in 8 states moved to disqualify at least some family planning providers from state funding. Three states have done it this year. And it's not just something to make political points about. It is really happening. And it is having a real and in some cases devastating on-the-ground effect on real American lives. Earlier this month, the Texas Tribune published a stomach-churning story about American women leaving the country, American women crossing the border to go to pharmacies in Mexico to buy a drug they hope will end their unwanted pregnancies. The pharmacies these women visit in Mexico are largely unregulated. You are not talking to a licensed pharmacist. You're just talking to the guy who works at the counter. And so without a doctor's supervision and without qualified medical advice, women are often not getting proper instructions on how to use the drug that they're buying there, a drug that requires a prescription in the United States and that is not prescribed here on its own for abortions. One Texas clinic director telling the Texas Tribune that her clinic's patients have often ingested the drug in varying amounts. Some would take an entire bottle within days, based on what friends and family had told them. One Mexican pharmacist who's unlicensed and untrained, but who is still allowed to sell the drug over the counter, said he had heard of girls hemorrhaging after using the pills. Quote, "I try my best to explain the consequences, but there's only so much I can do." Another person who works at a pharmacy saying, quote, "It sells, that's the problem, but I won't tell them how to take it. I just say, you might have problems later." You probably heard the term back alley abortions. When abortion was legal in the United States, when abortion was illegal in the United States in the years before the Roe versus Wade decision, abortions were obviously still sought by American women, and they were still provided to American women. But by and large, they had to be performed secretly. It was illegal. Here's a photo from that era. The caption provided by the Associated Press reads, "Still dazed, the client of an abortion doctor is being carried out of the raided apartment for the hospital. Detectives surprised the doctor in the midst of an illegal operation being performed on a kitchen table." This is what illegal abortion was in this country. If you were lucky, it was an actual doctor with real training and equipment operating on you, even if it was, say, on a kitchen table before the police rescued you and dragged you to the hospital. But there is a reason that the coat hanger is the symbol of the era of illegal abortion in this country, because a lot of abortions happening at that time were not even as safe as the kitchen table operation. In 1930, illegal abortion was listed as the official cause of death for almost 2,700 American women. 7 women a day, about a fifth of the overall maternal death rate in this country in that year. In the days of back alley coat hanger abortions, thousands of women died. Thousands of American women died because they did not have access to safe abortion. It was illegal, but that did not stop it. And now, the new coat hanger can be pharmaceutical, a drug you have to get in another country with no doctor's advice, with rumor and good luck providing your advice on your dosage. The new back alley is across the border, where Texas women are resorting to unregulated pharmacies in Mexico to do what Americans technically have the legal right to get here from an actual doctor. That's what the climate is like in Texas right now. A story about women crossing the border and risking their lives and their health in unregulated pharmacies was reported in the Texas Tribune a week and a half ago. Texas deeply cut family planning programs last year for low-income women. And, of course, they instituted forced ultrasounds, where not only does the state government force any woman who wants to have an abortion to have a medically unnecessary ultrasound against her will, the government also forces her to do that a day in advance of when she is allowed to get an abortion. So if you can't handle that, then maybe Mexico, take your chances. On top of those existing restrictions and what we already know about their impact in Texas, just in the last 24 hours, a federal appeals court has now okayed the state of Texas's plan to cut all state funding from Planned Parenthood clinics. This had been blocked by an injunction. It's now been cleared. Clinics that provide health and family planning services to nearly half of the 130,000 patients enrolled in a program to provide health and family planning services for low-income women. This is a state where access to reproductive health care is already so dire that women are seeking abortions from off-label drugs they are getting from unlicensed, unregulated pharmacies in Mexico. And now tens of thousands of women who still did have access to birth control and family planning services are getting cut off from those services in the last 24 hours. Joining us now for the interview is Thanh Tan. She is a reporter for the Texas Tribune. She has been reporting on women going to Mexico to purchase medicine for medical abortions. Thanh, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I've obviously been following your reporting closely. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Rachel.
Let me ask you if I got anything wrong in trying to summarize your reporting correctly there. Did I get any major factual things wrong?
Well, I'm not sure if I want to correct you. I don't think there's any need for that. But, I will clarify, though, that right now the Planned Parenthood clinics that are part of the Women's Health Program are still in the program. The state is currently trying to figure out a way with the Attorney General to figure out a date for when they can cut off Planned Parenthood. So there are tens of thousands of women who may be confused right now, but Planned Parenthood is still officially part of the program until the state excludes them officially, and we're waiting to find out more information about that.
Thank you for clarifying that. And in terms of the legal fight over that, obviously the state has its own process for what's going to happen with that funding and then how that's going to redound to those clinics and those clinics' patients. But do you know anything about what may happen next in the legal fight over this? This happened at a relatively high-level court today. Do we know if there's going to be further appeals?
Well, we know that there are two court cases that were going on. Planned Parenthood had filed a lawsuit last spring after Governor Perry announced that the state was going to go it alone, was going to forgo federal funding in order to enforce the state's rules, which have long excluded abortion providers and abortion affiliates. Planned Parenthood filed a lawsuit last spring to try to stay in the program, and they were able to get an injunction from a district judge here. The state went to the federal court and was able to get another injunction, which was lifting basically the lower court's order, and that has been in place, and Planned Parenthood has been able to stay in this program over the last couple of months. Now, a lot of people were wondering when the appeals court was going to weigh in on this, and yesterday they did. And they have told the state that, you can legally ban Planned Parenthood from this program while we wait for a district court to provide or to hold a hearing on this matter sometime in the fall, probably October.
When you did the reporting that led to the story that I summarized in detail here about women crossing the border from Texas into Mexico and accessing these unregulated pharmacies, when you talked to healthcare providers in South Texas about seeing women who had done that, seeing them in the aftermath of them having essentially self-medicated to try to give themselves medical abortions, were healthcare providers in Texas describing that as something that there has been an uptick in? Are they seeing more of that? Is it something they have always seen?
Well, it's hard to track the numbers on this just because not everybody reports when they've tried to use these pills. The health providers that I talked to said that anecdotally they have noticed in the last year or so that more women seem to be using alternate means of trying to have an abortion, whether that is taking herbal pills or whether that is, in one case, a doctor told me last week that a woman chugged a six-pack of hot beer thinking that it would make her throw up. Or, as I reported in the story, there are women who are either crossing the border or are having their friends or their family members get this Cytotec or this misoprostol for them so that they can try it at home and try to self-induce an abortion in the privacy of their own home. And the thing is that we only hear about the reports, the public reports here, because the abortion providers have told us that they're seeing this in their clinics. We don't know how much this may be happening, out there in the real world. But we do know that there has been extensive research that has been done on the issue of misoprostol use, and a few studies have shown that it's very common. It's commonly used in countries where abortion is not legal or is not widely available, and it's used in Latin America often as well. And so, because of that proximity to Mexico, you have a lot of people here in Texas, especially down along the border area, who are perhaps resorting to this method.
Thanh Tan, reporter for the Texas Tribune. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and for your reporting on this. I have not seen other reporting of this type on this phenomenon in the country, but I have a feeling that what you have done is going to spark other people to look into seeing if this is happening in other places. So congratulations on the work, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. So if contesting a tough election is just too hard, why not try to get your opponent thrown off the ballot? It's happening all over, and there are some surprising culprits. That's next.